What's all the commotion?
We've got another holiday to worry about. It seems Thanksgiving Day is upon us. I haven't even finished eating all my Halloween candy!
Happy Thanksgiving. Man, I love Thanksgiving. It is my third favorite holiday, behind Easter and Christmas. You can't beat the birth and resurrection of Christ, but give me some turkey and dressing. You have my attention. Thanksgiving is one of the few major holidays where nobody wants anything. No cards, no gifts, no candy. Don't get me wrong, I love the other holidays. 4th of July, who doesn't like blowing stuff up? Christmas, oh yeah, let it snow.
Snow, 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 snow.
The first Thanksgiving is usually associated with the Pilgrims in 1621 to celebrate the first harvest in the New World. It lasted 3 days. Those guys knew how to do it right with a 3-day party. According to writing by Edward Winslow, who was in attendance, there were 53 Pilgrims and 90 Native Americans. Eating, shooting, competitions, friendship, they all seemed to be a part of the celebration. I'm sure there were some disagreements, but Winslow doesn't talk about any serious injuries or deaths. So I think we can consider it a success. That's more than we can say about some modern Thanksgiving get-togethers. You know who you are. Thanksgiving has been celebrated nationally off and on since 1789 after a proclamation by none other than General George Washington. What's interesting is that President Washington declared a specific day, November 26th of that year, as a day of Thanksgiving. He made another national declaration in 1795. President John Adams and James Madison continued that tradition, although Thomas Jefferson never did. It wasn't until 1863 that Thanksgiving became a national holiday, when President Lincoln declared, "We set aside the last Thursday of November next as a day of thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent Father who dwelleth in the heavens. And I recommend to them that while offering up the ascriptions justly due to him for such singular deliverances and blessings, they do also, with humble penitence for our national perversedness and disobedience, commend to his tender care all those who have become widows, orphans, mourners, or sufferers in the lamentable civil strife in which we are unavoidably engaged, and fervently implore the interposition of the Almighty hand to heal the wounds of the nation and to restore as soon as may be consistent with the divine purposes to the full employment of peace, harmony, tranquility, and union." Thanksgiving has been observed annually ever since. What's interesting is that in 1939, November actually had 5 Thursdays. President Roosevelt declared the 4th Thursday of that year to be Thanksgiving. Believe it or not, merchandising was the reason. You see, in 1939, the United States was in the midst of the Great Depression, and with the extra week between Thanksgiving and Christmas, President Roosevelt thought it would help the retailers and also help pull the country out of the Depression. Since the presidential declaration is not law, states had the option of whether or not to abide by the 4th Thursday or the 5th Thursday. About half the states declared the 4th Thursday as Thanksgiving, about half the states celebrated the 5th Thursday as Thanksgiving. What's interesting is that Texas didn't make that decision. It actually celebrated it twice, once on the 4th Thursday and the second time on the 5th Thursday, thus having 2 government holidays. In 1941, Congress passed a bill designating the 4th Thursday of November as the official day of Thanksgiving. On December 26th, President Roosevelt signed that bill into law, making the date of Thanksgiving a federal law. Throughout the second half of the 19th century, traditions varied from across the country, although a lot of them we would still recognize today. Turkey, pumpkin pie were 2 of the foods that were eaten back then also. Sports have been a part of Thanksgiving since the beginning. The earliest high school rivalries started in Massachusetts as games played on Thanksgiving. Professional football has been a part of Thanksgiving celebration since its inception in the 1890s. Football on Thanksgiving continues to be a tradition in national stadiums, college stadiums, and fields and lawns across the country. Which brings me to another tradition close to me, the Thanksgiving game between Texas A&M and Texas. That game tradition started way back in 1894. and continued until Texas A&M left the Southwest Conference to join the Southeast Conference in 2012. I will grudgingly admit that Texas has a higher win count in the series than Texas A&M does, but as any good Aggie knows, on the games where the score did not end up in our favor, we just ran out of time. Once Texas A&M left the Southwest Conference and joined the SEC, we started a new tradition, playing LSU on Thanksgiving. Which brings me to another Thanksgiving tradition with many high notes and one very low note, Aggie Bonfire. Texas A&M has a long tradition of building a big-ass fire and lighting it before the game with TU. For 90 years, we built fires on campus every autumn, known only to Aggies as Bonfire. Bonfires symbolized our burning desire to beat the hell out of TU. Early fires were nothing more than piles of trash, but over the years it became much more organized and turned into a very big fire. In fact, in 1969, Aggie Bonfire set the world record for the highest bonfire ever to that date, of 105 feet. Since then, it has toned down quite a bit, and when I was there in the late 80s, our stacks were somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 65 feet tall. When I was at Texas A&M, I participated in cutting the trees and stacking the wood for bonfire. I had a lot of good memories from that, and I treasure them. To get a feel for the size of how big this Aggie Bonfire is, each tree on the bottom layer was about 15 to 18 feet long, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3, some of them maybe even larger in diameter. Then there were 3 to 5 more stacks and a wedding cake arrangement above those. It's a huge bonfire. Unfortunately, in 1999 on November 18th, things went horribly wrong. At about 2:30 in the morning, the stack fell. 12 people lost their lives in the blink of an eye. I am not going to get into the hows and whys of what happened. That has been extensively investigated and conclusions have been made. What I am going to do is talk a little bit about Bonfire as it relates to the people who worked to build it. By many estimates, Aggie Bonfire was the largest student-organized organization in the country, with as many as 5,000 students participating in a given year. Bonfire starts for the students with the cut. On weekends, students turn out with axes and chainsaws to cut down trees on land that's been donated by a local landowner. Cut continues for about 2 months. Once the center pole is in place, stacking begins. This is a huge project. After the tragedy, President of Texas A&M, Ray Bowen, put it in a way that I think exemplifies the feeling that most Aggies have about Aggie Bonfire. When asked whether or not Aggie Bonfire would continue, President Bowen replied, "If I allow my heart to make the decision, we would continue Bonfire. My heart will not make the decision. My brain needs to make the decision." In 2002, Ray Bowen declared that Aggie Bonfire was officially canceled. Starting in 2002, an unofficial bonfire has been built and lit off campus. Organized by Student Bonfire, a non-profit organization and not associated with the university, this organization has changed the structure of the stack and set a standard design with many safety features built in. It burns the night before Thanksgiving. Well, that wraps up this week's vlog. Tell someone how much they mean to you and give them a big hug. And eat an extra piece of pie. See ya.